Technology. Ever heard the joke about how many computer scientists does it take to start a presentation? Yeah, well, it takes 3 or 4.5. So I'm really glad to see you all here today. I'm happy to share my thoughts with you about what it's like to be a pioneer in computing and what it's been like to see the evolution of computers in technology, in society, and what its impact has been on the people that work with them. See if I can use this to click. So, before I get started talking about all of that, I want you to take a moment and think about yourself. So if you want to take out a piece of paper or whatever it is that you make notes on, just make a couple of notes for yourself. The first thing that I want you to think about is what you're good at. We already know that you're good at engineering and you're good at going to school. Is there anything else that really makes you motivated? Think about what it is that you would do for free if it was an opportunity. What you would do on a Saturday night or a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon for free. Think about what's important to you. What are the things that you value? It might not be the same thing that you're good at. For a lot of us, we're good at something and we're really passionate about something else. Okay, I'm good at computer science, but I'm passionate about photography. Make a note of that. And think about those two spaces in your head. And then there's a third space I want you to think about, and that's the stuff that you hate. The stuff that you would cross the street to avoid. The things that make you uncomfortable, they make you edgy. And now I want you to think, with these three spaces in your head, build a kind of a Venn diagram with intersecting circles that look like this. And that space that I've highlighted there is your destination. That's what you want to be thinking about moving towards. Not what people have told you to do, not what your parents' expectation is, not what your boss says, not what Dr. Carr says or Dr. Chan. Okay? Thinking about your skills and your passion, and also avoiding that other stuff. Okay. That's in your head. So, the title of my talk is forking, blah, 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 something. Forking rules, forking yourself, forking, I don't know. But you're probably wondering, like, why a person that's supposed to be respectable is up here talking about forking this and forking that. And it's because in the open source community, forking has a specific definition. Open source, that's where people share and copy each other's software for personal projects and industry projects and so forth. And the idea of forking is that you take a system that's not working for its intended purpose, and you take a copy, prune out all the stuff that's not working, and start building on that copy, something new that works for your intended purpose. A new system ready to be tailored to its new environments and requirements. That's a powerful idea. That says we don't blow up the building because we're not happy with the air conditioning or something like that. It says that we can move forward building improvements incrementally on what's gone before. And that idea from the open source community, we can translate into other domains. So you can think about forking gender roles, which is a thing that happens, and forking science and technology, and forking work culture, and forking yourself. By the way, I love using forking in a sentence because it sounds faintly subversive, and it always has tension, and that's one of my little idiosyncrasies. So, I want to talk about gender, technology, culture, and what it's going to mean to you in your future. And to give some context to my perspective, I'm going to roll the calendar back, way back to the 1970s, and I'm going to start talking about technology in the 70s. And this person right there, that's me in 1978. I just graduated high school. See how cute I am? This is what happens. 40 years of computer science will do this to a person. In 1970s, in the late 1970s, when I was studying computer science at the University of Arizona, there was no formal computer science degree. The field of computer science was barely 20 years old. And to study computer science at the University of Arizona meant that you were working on a machine that looked like this. There were programming courses. I could take classes and learn about Fortran, or Algol, or Snowball, or COBOL, lots of languages that ended in balls. But there was no classes on databases, there were no classes on informatics, there are no classes on high-performance computing, because that was high-performance computing. That, in fact, is the computer that I learned on in the 1970s. One computer for the entire campus. It did everything. It ran all of the campus systems, and it also supported all of the computer curriculum in the university. A little bit more context, since I'm also going to be talking about culture. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about gender roles and the cultural impacts of feminism, rise of civil rights and women's rights in the greater culture, mostly United States. So in the early 60s, like 1963, was the first time that women could have credit cards of their very own. 1963. Prior to that, a woman depended her entire financial existence depended on some male in her family. In 1965, the FDA approved birth control for women. This was huge because it meant for like the first time for many women, their lives were liberated from the burden of having to worry about getting pregnant, which interrupts your education, it interrupts your career, it takes over your life, a significant part of your emotional and physical life for a long time. After birth control became acceptable and ready to be purchased, a lot of women felt free to start to pursue education and jobs. They felt liberated. At the same time, it was not 100% supported in this society. The Pope, Pope Paul VI at that time, said that that's direct interruption of the generative process. A lot of the arguments against birth control are the same arguments that you'll hear today in contemporary society about abortion. God wants you to be pregnant, women, and interfering with that is a problem. But birth control was legalized anyhow. Other things that were going on in the world in the 1970s, just to give you context, the Vietnam War was a big deal. So the United States was involved in a war to liberate parts of Vietnam from the communist influence. There was a draft. If you were over the age of 18, you were at a serious risk of getting sent to Asia to fight, kill, and die for some reason. At the same time, there was a corruption scandal where the President of the United States was implicated in a burglary to enhance his chances of winning the next election. But the biggest deal in the 1970s was this tennis game. And you know that it's a big deal because here's the story about the political scandal, and here's the story about the tennis match. And the story about the tennis match is that a professional woman tennis player was challenged by this weirdo who was kind of a huckster type, but anyhow, he said that he could beat the women's tennis champion in a fair match. And that was a big deal in the 1970s. And then the woman beat the guy. How creepy is that? This is after he lost. He still got to hold on to her, hold her back. She might do something. So, this tennis game was a major big deal because it proved that women could be the equal of men. And that was the thinking. In 1923, oh my God, I can't believe she's gone back to 1923. I was just getting comfortable with the 1970s. What on earth happened in 1923? Well, in 1923, Congress reviewed an amendment to the Constitution called the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA. And the point of that amendment was to say that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged on account of sex. That was in 1923. Congress didn't do anything about it until the 1970s, probably because of that tennis match. And it was a very contentious argument. On one side, and here are the two foremost minds on the ERA debate. Over here, this is Phyllis Schlafly, and over there, that's Gloria Steinem. She was against the ERA. She was for the ERA. Her arguments would sound familiar to you. Her arguments were, if the Equal Rights Amendment passes, it's a slippery slope. Women will be drafted, women will have to fight in the armies, women will have to share their bathrooms and toilets with men, women will have to wear pants. Everything that men do, women will have to do. Men will be up in women's faces all the time. There'll be no protections. Women have protections now. They can be protected in their homes as long as they stay there. Gloria Steinem's argument was, what? I just want to be equal in rights to men. I just want to be able to walk around freely and not be molested or discriminated against. So that was the ERA, and it went up for debate in Congress in the 1970s, and it never passed. It needed 39 of the 50 states to ratify it in order to be able to pass. Here's what the state of the ERA looks like today. Those dark blue states are the states that ratified the ERA in the 70s. The light blue states are the states that ratified it once and then rescinded their ratification later to say, oh no, we're sorry. We don't want women to have equal rights. The states that are gray never ratified the ERA. So here we are in 2024, and women don't have equal rights. Women do not have equal rights in this country. It's not guaranteed by our Constitution. Does that surprise you? Does it make you mad? I don't know if you can tell, but I'm shaking. I am so mad. In the 1970s, after Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs at tennis, after birth control became widely available, I thought for sure in my lifetime, probably in the next 10 years, there would be a woman president in the United States. I thought the ERA would be ratified. I thought women would have equal rights. I thought that there would be equal representation in the C-level offices of corporations. There would be an equal number of women senators and congresspeople. And yet here we are. Sorry, got a little off track. I'll bring it back to computers where we're all comfortable. In 1978, this is what a computer science class assignment looked like. 1978, that's when I started taking computer science classes. Card reader. You've heard of punched cards. Yeah, well, some of us have lived it. So you start by typing your, well, no, you don't start with that. You start by writing all of your code out in pencil on coding sheets, and then you turn in, and when that gets checked off, then you can go to the card punch machine and type up your code on cards. I want you to internalize this because cards don't have a backspace on them. There is no copy-paste, and you can only do it one line at a time. Each one of these cards represents one line of code. And if you make a typo and catch it, you have to retype that card. If you make a typo and don't catch it, well, here's what happens next. You take your card deck to another floor of the computer science building. There's a card reader, and it's about the size of these two tables stuck together, and it's got a bin with a weight, and you put your cards in, put the weight on top of it, and they get sucked through and read with light, which was amazing. And it sounds like this. Okay, so that's the sound of computing happening. And then you wait for 15 or 20 minutes for your program to compile. And if it doesn't compile, well, no, let's start with the happier case. If it does compile, then it runs and you get a printout, and you read the printout to see if it did what it was supposed to do. If it doesn't run, you get a printout and it says, error found, and then you have to wonder, like, what line was the error in? What kind of an error was it? What point of the program did the error happen? I don't know, because and it will never tell you. But a lot of the computing happens in this room in your university, and a lot of your time computing is spent sitting there waiting for your program to run, which is where I met is probably a strong word. This is where I encountered the girl with the t-shirt, whose t-shirt would haunt me for the rest of my days because it was so perplexing. She had this t-shirt on. It had like iron-on letters, and it said, "A woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle." In 1978, this was baffling to me. I got stuck on so many parts of this, and I had to see, she wore the t-shirt absolutely every single day. And so every day I was in the computer center, I puzzled over the message on this t-shirt. I had in 1978 a vague notion that maybe she was gay, but that wasn't really a thing that people talked about in 1978. In fact, it was still considered kind of a mental illness, so I didn't know what to do with that information. So I started breaking things down, like a woman without a man, a woman without a man, a woman without a man. What does that mean? What does that even mean? What does a woman without a man even mean? And then I'd get bogged down on a fish without a bicycle. And it was puzzling. I probably puzzled over that t-shirt as much as I worried about my computer science homework, because all I had in my head was this. And I couldn't put the ideas together. So poor little me, 18-year-old, living away from home for the first time, wondering what's going on in the world. Put a pin in that. 10 years pass, and real life has a way of erasing our idealism and interjecting reality. And I graduated from college. I got my undergraduate degree, and I started working in what we call now industry, but it was a corporation culture. And I was having some trouble. My first challenge was that I unexpectedly got pregnant. And let this be a lesson to you. Just because birth control says it's 99% effective does not mean it's 100% effective. When birth control fails, that's like a total person. A baby happens. A pregnancy happens. And in the 1980s, I got pregnant unexpectedly. And then I had to deal with all of the things that happen to you when you're unexpectedly pregnant and trying to have a career. One of the first things that I found out in the 1980s is that maternity leave is not a thing in the 1980s. So I had to sort of organize my life around that. And then the next thing that I encountered was, once I had solved the problem of having children and being a career woman, was that my bosses said that I was unlikable. So they said, you know, Bettina, you use a lot of big words, and it makes people around you feel dumb. And you have an awful lot of energy, and people think that you're disruptive, they think you're making fun of them, they don't want to work with you, you're unlikable. So that was kind of a big problem because I had, at that point, a family to support, and I had to somehow figure out how to navigate being unlikable when I thought that I was going to be evaluated on how well I could solve problems and how efficiently my code ran and how well I was executing my actual job. So I asked my boss, okay, you're telling me that I have to fix this unlikable problem. What is the metric that you will be using to evaluate whether I have fixed that? And he just looked at me like, this is why you're unlikable, Bettina, because you say crazy things like that. So, I did sort it out. And most of what I did was I doubled down on everything. There was a magazine that I subscribed to called Working Mother. It advised that you wear this kind of suit. I bought a lot of gray suits and a lot of perky little bows, and I wore those. And actually, let me go back. All right, we're going to just stay there. I bought a lot of perky little bows. I stopped talking in meetings. I started agreeing with people a lot more. And my boss said, I think you're going to work out. I think it's going to be okay. And I got promoted. And I started working a lot more hours. And my ex-husband said that I was getting to be a lot like Mumra, who was a character in a Thundercats cartoon that my daughter used to watch. Only he said I was like Momra, the ever-working Momra. So he was supportive. Anyhow, career was going great. And then, since I was doubling down, and I was trying to, impress the people that I worked for, I was signing up for every professional development training that they offered in my company. And I came across a catalog entry for a training called White Maleism in the Corporate Culture, which was on the previous slide. White Maleism in the Corporate Culture. You are not going to forget that title ever. That has a real ring to it. And I thought, there is no way that somebody is actually teaching a course called White Maleism in the Corporate Culture, and I can go to this? That's hilarious. I'm going. So I went to the White Maleism in Corporate Culture workshop, which was a day long, and the instructor started to talk about the players in corporate culture. He says, in corporate culture, you've got people with power, and you've got the people without power. In any situation you encounter in corporate culture, there's going to be somebody who's got all the power. Are you going to give me like finger signs when I go over my time? I'm good. So people with power, you know these people, they're entitled. They know that they were born to be in a particular position. They're kind of territorial. They have a really recognizable look. People without power are not comfortable, but they can be alert, they can be opportunistic, they can be clever. Now, in the 1980s, no, actually this was early 90s. In the early 90s, we did talk like this. We said things like, men are like this and women are like that. Because in 1992, there was a very famous book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, and 15 million copies sold. And it was like a handbook that told us women are good at communication and social things and art, and men are good at analysis and mathematical things and procedural things and leadership. So when my white maleism and corporate culture teacher was talking about this, he started out talking about people in power and people that don't have power. But what he was saying, and he got to it pretty quickly, was white men are like this and everybody else is like that. Today, we know it's not that binary. But for the purposes of my presentation here, I'm going to use the terms that this guy, he was a white guy, who taught the class, what the terms he used. So the people that have power, they demonstrate certain behavior and certain things that they value. So like position, where a person is positioned in a room tells you something about their feeling of power, how comfortable they are, what territory. People in power are always concerned with what territory they can control. Sometimes this looks like budget, sometimes this looks like physical territory, like on a plane, if you've ever seen the term man-spreading. If they're on a train, they're taking up a lot of space. People in power are concerned with hierarchies. Position in the hierarchy tells you something, and people tend to get really comfortable with hierarchies in this culture. They're interested in loyalty to the hierarchy. They're interested in conformity. A lot of people in the C-level offices all look the same. They have the same haircut. They wear the same color tie. They have the same type of glasses. Microsoft used to be a great example for this. And they're also transactional. So there's an awful lot of favor trading in this group. So I'll do this for you if you do this for me, or I'll do this for you with the expectation that in the future I can call in that favor. Personally, I love it if a person is transactional because I will use that. I will ask for the favor. On the other hand, the values of the people who are not in power, they're not concerned with territory and homogeneity and ladders, but they are making plans, they're making allies, they're looking for defensible positions, they're looking for common ground. That's how they're going to navigate this culture. I was told by a boss that the world is hard and soft, kind people will be crushed. And this sort of encapsulates the cultural stance, that you walk around with a sword in armor, and that's what's necessary to be successful. I don't know about you, but if a person approaches me with a sword in their hand, I'm not going to immediately start thinking about how I can make their life easier. I'm going to be expecting to get stabbed, and I might be looking for defensible positions. Hiding weakness is big. So at the end of this workshop, the instructor, the white maleism workshop, you haven't forgot we're talking about white maleism, right? At the end of this white maleism workshop, the instructor kind of changes gears, and he says, you can win a game with rules. And if you understand these rules, you can win. But should you? That's a bigger question. Because this culture is killing people. People literally die from the stress of trying to maintain a hierarchy when it doesn't fit the problem you're trying to solve. They die from unhappiness and loneliness. Men have a much higher rate of depression than women do, and they hide it because, remember, hiding weakness is important. Studies tell us that women around the world report higher levels of satisfaction than men, even though they're making 75 cents for every dollar a man is making. When scientists ask men about their happiness and their life satisfaction, a lot of guys are confused by that. What do you mean, satisfaction? I have this territory. I have this salary. I have to defend these things. There's no room for happiness and satisfaction in the framework. Chronic stress definitely hurts. And I'm probably not telling you guys anything new. So, you can win a game with rules, but maybe there's something else you can do. Back to technology. In the 1980s, there was computers had gotten as small and cheap enough that people could start having them in their homes. And this, in fact, was my very first computer. It's a VIC-20, hooks up to your television set, just like a Raspberry Pi, and everything is in the keyboard here. And the advertising for these small home systems sort of leans towards encouraging boys to take up programming as a hobby. The downstream impact of this is going to be that a lot of boys and girls get to college and start to look at computer science as a career, and the boys have already had 2 or 3 years experience programming, and the girls have had none, because the home computer has been living in their brother's bedroom. You might not be aware of this, but for 20 years, computer science was a woman's field, because it was regarded kind of like an administrative job. The very first programmers, and you can Google this, the ENIAC programmers were all women. They were actually called computers. They had been doing calculations for the World War II war effort, and they were moved from that into working with the computers. So somehow, since the 1950s, computers has shifted from being a woman's job to being a man's job. How many women are there in this room compared to the number of guys? It's still a thing. There's a couple of theories about this. One has to do with the PCs infiltrating homes and being adopted mostly by the men in the family, and the girls are discouraged. Another theory is that as computer science became more integral to the running of businesses, that corporate culture started to leak into and influence tech culture. As the value of computing increased in the business framework, people started looking at these jobs and going, these are high value jobs. What are women doing in those jobs? You can follow the rules. So I tried following the rules. I did. I doubled down, I leaned in, I followed all of the books, advice, and the magazines. This is me in 1992 when I got my master's degree. In 1992, I was a mom, I was a wife, I was a director at my company. I had a budget with a lot of zeros in it. I was still wearing the little gray suits and the cute ties. I had a black belt in karate. I was like the epitome of an overachiever. I thought of myself as the best kick-assiest working wife, mother, MBA ever, but I don't know if you could tell from the expression on my face, but that's not a happy person. And my colleagues, the people that I worked with, still thought I was scared. I'm almost 5 foot tall. I look like a pit bull to you? That's what they said about me. Okay, maybe I'm a little noisy. I was also unhappy, I was sick, I was overworked, I was isolated, I was stressed, I needed medication. Things were not going well for me, despite the fact that I had all of the outward signs of success. When I first wrote this talk, it was before the Barbie movie. How many people have seen the Barbie movie? Oh my God, what's wrong with the rest of you? You have to go see the Barbie movie, right? Everybody has to go see the Barbie movie. Anyhow, I already knew that the rules for But by the time I was getting an MBA and I was so sick, I could feel that something was wrong. What is wrong? I'm following all the rules. Where are things not going better for me? Why am I not happy? Here are the rules that I learned. I have to be good at my job, but not too smart that I make other people feel dumb. I have to be a warrior and defend my territory, but I also have to be likable. I have to be attractive, but I also have to lean in and get my point across. I have to lean in even if somebody on the opposite side of the table is wearing armor and carrying a sword. I have to try not to get stabbed. I don't know why this would cause anybody any stress. It was perfectly easy to follow these rules. In the Barbie movie, there is a speech. You might have actually heard about the speech in the Barbie movie if you haven't seen the Barbie movie, but they talk about it's literally impossible to be a woman. These rules are all in conflict. So by 1994, I was no longer working. I'd gotten fired. I was no longer married. I got divorced. I still had a kid, so now I'm a single mother, an unemployed single mother, and my ex-husband had lots of debt, and I was, for some reason, responsible for all of it. And so there I was, at the end of my career, at the end of everything that I had tried to do. Unemployed, in debt, single mother, and it was kind of an epiphany. It was a moment where you're supposed to feel at your lowest, and I did a little. Sometimes I felt kind of bad about it, but then I realized I'm not dead. All these things that were supposed to kill me, that were supposed to end me, none of that happened. And then I knew that I'm forking invincible. I cannot be killed. All these things tried to kill me and they didn't kill me. Hooray for me, huzzah. And I started thinking about what am I going to do with my new freedom? So I made a Venn diagram of the things I'm good at, of the things that I value, of the things that I want to avoid. I'm good at a bunch of stuff, modestly, but the thing that I do that probably has the most value for anybody else is that I am very good at organization and planning. I really love making things. I'm a creative person, and I really hate people telling me what to do. I don't know why. So it turns out there's a lot of things that you can do that fall into that sweet spot. And I started looking at those. Did you forget about the fish on a bicycle? Did you forget about a world without men? Women without a man? I kind of did. And then I attended a conference. This conference was called Celebrating Women in Computing. And it was just a couple hundred women, computer scientists, who all got together to have a conference to talk about what research they were doing, what jobs they were doing, what was interesting in their life, how to get jobs. It was freaking amazing. Sorry, forking amazing. It was a forking amazing conference. And I immediately had a picture in my head of what does the world look like without men. I was sitting in a world without men. And you know what my overwhelming impression was? It was not that I had all sorts of freedom and I was brilliant. It was that I wasn't worried about anybody stepping on me. Guys will step on you. If you're 5 foot tall, you have no idea how many times a man will step on you or run into you or completely overlook you. Women never do that. Lots of smiles, less anxiety. So I started thinking about how to make more of that happen. How could I create a parallel world where there were more smiles and less anxiety? I started by thinking about this celebration of women in computing. And in 2005, myself and a bunch of friends got together and we started a conference called the Ohio Celebration of Women in Computing. In February will be the 20th year of Oakwick. It started out very low budget. It's about getting together, listening to inspirational talks, being casual, dancing. Dancing and food are very important to professional conferences. I'm the first to tell you this. If you are not dancing at your conference, hang on. Go find someplace else. That's not a fun place to be. You can make your own rules. Success can happen without leaving casualties in your wake. It's important to celebrate, to eat, to talk, to dance. Professionalism doesn't have to be dire. You can invite everyone to your party, and you don't have to worry about hierarchies. And you can encourage duplication. You don't have to be the first or the only for it to still be fun, for it to still be useful. And it's a group effort. I will not do this if I do not have a team of people with a variety of skills, a diversity of skills, a diversity of interests to stand next to me and tell me when my ideas are good, tell me when my ideas are bad, think up creative ways of doing things. We are so much better together. And we still find time to have fun, wear silly hats, and dance. We can do these things, and I can even wear a tiara and a feather boa and have the respect of everybody in the room. Oh, here's a trick. If you're ever wondering, like, what you should, if someone's asking you for a favor and you're wondering if you should do it, make up the most ridiculous thing that you want in exchange. Like, I will co-chair your committee if I can have a tiara and a feather boa. That's transactional. And sometimes people will actually do it for you, which is great. Tiaras are great. ACMW is the organization that I've been working with since the early 2000s that makes all of this happen. It's a network, it's an international network of women professionals in computer science. So what does all this have to do with forking? When I decided to build a parallel conference, a conference that was going to be conferencey, have technical talks, have birds of a feather sessions, have poster sessions, have plenary sessions, has a conference framework, but it's all about celebration. That's forking. I forked professional conferences with all my friends. You can be a forker too. You don't have to play by the rules if they're not working for you. Organizational hierarchies work in a minority of situations. Most situations work better with committees and networks. Unless you are fighting, literally fighting a war, and you need absolute loyalty and replication down a line, networks are going to be better. If you're thinking about a career in corporate, think about doing something different than corporate. A lot of you are heading for academic careers. You're graduate students. Academia has inherited, unfortunately, a lot of corporate culture, a lot of that same idea about hierarchies and territory, and academia is problematic, but nobody in academia has ever told me that I was too smart, which to me is the biggest advantage and the biggest reason to stay in academia. If you're a smart person, academia is much friendlier to you. Corporate culture is not friendly to smart people. They don't really want to hear about your good ideas there. Your domain, what are you responsible for? Are you responsible for some piece of an organization, or are you responsible for your family, your community, for yourself? Pick an area that you want to impact. And everybody loves a nerd that wants to help them. Every situation you go into, you're technical, you know something, you want to help me, you're going to get open arms. If you start from the attitude that I'm here to help. I've got knowledge. I've got a network. I want to help. Everybody is going to welcome you. Start from that. Do I have 3 minutes for a story?
Yeah, sure. No, you have 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
It's a surfeit of minutes. Okay, so when you get out of here, the kinds of things that you're going to be talking about in interviews, a lot of you have the same story. Okay, I went to UT, I was a graduate student, I took these classes, I did these projects. Okay, so what you want to think about is how you're going to distinguish yourself in those interviews. And also along the way, you should also be thinking about building your network. So, in the early 2000, well, I guess this would have been 2011, an acquaintance of mine, and I have a network, an acquaintance of mine was starting a blog called Grandmas Get STEM, Grandma Got STEM. And the reason that they were starting a blog about this was because on a lot of technology classes, grandmas were being held up as like the metric of user first. So, a lot of students were being told, write it so that your grandma can run it. As if that's like the stupidest person you can imagine. So she set up this blog to highlight grandmas who were already in STEM. And I had recently become a grandma at that time, and I had taken this cute picture of my granddaughter Kira at a PC, and my friend was looking for submissions for her blog to kind of get it started, and I was like, I'll write something, put this cute picture on it, and I just wrote something quick and threw it off. And what happened next was that the blog posted, and about the next week it got picked up by, I think it was Slate magazine, an online magazine. They found it very endearing, really cute, human interest story. Grandma's getting STEM, haha. And then it got picked up by more and more outlets. It went viral. And because of the timing, my story with my granddaughter was at the top of the blog. Every time somebody posted a link to it, here I am, my granddaughter, teaching her about operating systems. Then I get a call, or I actually got an email saying, would you like to talk to the TED people? Because they're looking for people who can teach computer science. In those days, TED Ed didn't have any computer science curriculum in it. And so I contacted the TED people and I said, I absolutely want to do something with you. And they said, fine, write us a course in 5 minutes. And I said, about what? And they said, we have no programming at all in computer science, so write it about anything that you want. 2.8 million views later, this is a really cool thing that I got to do, was make a little cartoon about how computers work that high school students have to look at, and I had a big impact this way. Point being, talk to people about what you're doing. Good stuff happens when you know people and they know what you're doing. You can talk to people in your network. When things are hard, ask yourself, am I trying to be a fish on a bicycle? Is this system that I'm working with, the rules, are they going to make me happy? Are they going to make me more fulfilled? Are they going to get me to that point in my Venn diagram? If you're defensive and you feel like you need to keep other people at a distance, you're going to make them defensive. Failure is not a permanent state. You're going to fail a lot in your future. I'm sorry to tell you. It's almost never a permanent state. There's always something else that you can do afterwards. It hurts at the moment, but then you get past it. Focus on your skills and passion. Find your path from there. Put your goals in context. There have been many times in my life where I thought that setting fires and burning bridges seemed like a really good idea. I'm glad that I did not set any fires or burn any bridges, because then I would probably be talking to you from a cell instead of the front of the room. And that is my talk for today. Thank you for being here.